Welcome to the Weird Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And on this podcast, we normally focus on the Weird War Tales comic book series published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. However, on this episode, we're going on a little special mission and checking out something called All American Men of War number 74. But first, Rich has a little something to say to you.
Intel report, Warbirds, a trade paperback from Dark Horse Comics from April 2023. Script by Jeffrey D. Wessel, art by Steve Parkhouse. Two renegade AI minds simply want to make conversation, not war. When a bipedal independent robot soldier makes a unique connection with an injured flying drone, they flee the war zone they're in to seek lives of their own. Their military builders want to destroy them, while a sympathetic pair of humans try what they can to free the errant bots from military service. Title detail. The book that would become All-American Men of War began life as All-American Comics in April 1939, running 102 issues to October 1948. From there, it became All-American Western from issue 103 in November 1948 to issue 126 in June-July 1952. It finally became All-American Men of War at issue 127, August-September 1952, lasting only 2 issues before the powers that be decided to renumber the series after issue 128 in October-November 1952. Beginning with issue 2 in December 1952, January 1953, the title ran 116 issues, ending with issue 117, September-October 1966. Why they started with issue 2, not issue 3, is beyond me. All-American Men of War was the first of the big 5 books to be canceled after 118 total issues. Weird War Tales lasted longer than a big 5 book, 124. I have them all, except for issue 1, issue number 127. Spoiler, it ain't cheap. Johnny Cloud, the Navajo ace, was introduced in issue 82 and became the issue headliner afterwards, though Lieutenant Steve Savage, Balloon Buster, took a few issues as the series approached the end. Cover detail. Pencils by Ross Andrew. Inks by Mike Exposito. 10 cents. All-American Men of War is blue on white on a purple and black background. A grinning Nazi with an MP40 leans out of a trench towards 2 tiny American soldiers. The Americans are tugging on the trigger of a Luger that's lying flat on the ground with the web belt pointed towards the enemy, trying to get it to fire. A text block to the left of the scene exclaims, "The minute commandos! The most startling report to come out of the war!" Cover date, October 1959. Date of release, October 18th, 1959. Old Comics Man. Seen on eBay for anywhere between 24 and 57 bucks. A little Killjoy. Nazi armband in the field. Also, the German is wearing a World War I Stahl helm, and I can find no evidence that our troops wore flags on their helmets in the war. Armbands, sure, but not helmets. CNC. This scene takes place inside the book, and I'll just say it right now. I don't care how ridiculous this scenario might seem. Jerry, you see what they're trying to do. Don't just stand there, point blank in front of a Luger that 2 miniature enemies are trying to fire at you. Anyone want to guess how this pans out in the book? Anyone? But to the scene itself, the purpose of a comic cover is to get the passing public to purchase that purloin, this periodical. That's enough peas for one day. And the legendary duo of Andrew and Esposito accomplished my need to, at the very least, pick it up and flip through it. The evil leer of the German is MP40, looking like a cannon aimed at the tiny Americans who are straining to get the Luger to fire and hope they hit what they're aiming at. And what's the backstory of the small soldiers? Oh yeah, mission accomplished. Take my time.
Yeah, I'll take this opportunity to mention when you said the backstory of the small soldiers just now, it popped into my head. Small tip of the cap, so to speak, to a little movie called Small Soldiers from sometime in the 80s, I think, where a couple of toy lines come to life It was like, sort of a G.I. Joe Masters of the Universe futuristic style mashup of the good guys and the bad guys, but they were secretly military weapons. And I don't, Rich is good, looking completely glazed, but trust me, people, it's a lost classic. I don't even know if it's on any streaming services, but we rented the heck out of that in the VH section of my parents' variety store back in the 80s. Small Soldiers. You just lightning bolted that back into my head. So for my CNC for this cover, the short version is this cover is perfect. Slightly longer version, okay. The composition, the character acting on all the figures, the sheer detail put into every element, and the perfectly executed sense of perspective and scale all combine to make this a struttingly competent cover. It's going to be hard for the interiors to hold a candle, but here's hoping. I also got to mention, I really love this series logo. I'm a sucker for a good logo, people. And the tilted spear with the waving all American banner hanging from it, and the lettering of, well, the word of between the block lettered men and war. It's just, it all seems simple enough. But the combination of it all taken together just has that special something that all the classic logos have and so many others miss. I enjoyed the heck out of just looking at this cover. I could t-shirt, poster, sign me up. I'm good. So I'm imagining, Rich, you're going to take us into the first story in this issue.
You would be right. But before we get into that, while you were talking, I had to do my own quick little deep dive into Small Soldiers. And as soon as I saw the poster for it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember seeing the poster for it in comic books and everything. I didn't see it, but yeah, what the 1, 2, 3 write up, it was came out in 1998. Action comedy film directed by Joe Dante, starring Kirsten Dunst and Gregory Smith, with the voices of Frank Langella and Tommy Lee Jones. Commercial failure, grossing 71 million against a $40 million budget, also marks the last on-screen role of Phil Hartman, who was murdered 2 months before the film's premiere, and it's dedicated to his memory. So, also Clint Walker's final film role prior to his retirement from acting in 1998 and death in 2018. So yeah, okay, maybe as bad as all this says, I might have to go give this a peek at.
I mean, that's just a good example, people, of how bad my memory is. But also, 1998 was a long time ago. So I smeared that into, I think we had that in our store in the 80s. Well, I was still leeching off my parents in the 90s and living at home. So it all just smeared together for me. But 1998 is a pretty far spit from the 80s. But man. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good movie, people, but it was fun and people rented the heck out of it because, like, oh, it looks like a movie for kids. And it's like, well, these things are deadly weapons. And okay, here you go. Have it back
Oh,
and rewind.
well, well, there was an 8 in there, so maybe that's what threw you off. And as
No,
far as
just my faulty brain threw me off as
and
always. But I did not even there's no way I remembered anyone who was in that movie, nor that it would be Phil Hartman's final appearance. I mean, damn.
what a way to go out. People get on Sean Connery for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen being his last flick and everything. But
At
as far as
least he chose that as his last flick. That wasn't taken out of his hands, so to
I
speak.
like that movie. I don't know why people slag on that
I
one
had
so much.
fun in the theater watching it, but even I, with my, as you picked up, you from knowing me for unfortunately this long, and the listeners for like listening to any episode of this, my paltry knowledge of anything historical or geographical, even I was like, we're having a car race in Venice, are we? And there's a cemetery, and the sub entered Venice and the canals. Okay. Even I was almost like I was just kind of thrown out by all that stuff at the end in Venice. But anyway, didn't we say we were going to look at the first story in this
Yeah,
issue
we
or
will.
something?
But,
Blah.
but one final note, as far as movies are concerned, you know where I'm going. Hands of Steel. Anyway, first story.
Available on YouTube. Watch it. I did.
The Minute Commandos. 13 pages. Script by Bob Conacher, art by the aforementioned legendary team of Andrew and Esposito. They're have been many startling stories coming out of the war, and some that can never be released. Here is a top secret report that can only be told in whispers. Here is the amazing tale of the most unusual fighters in the world, the Minute Commandos. This jump was different than any other we had taken from the very start. Only 6 of us filed aboard the C-47 that night under the full moon, take a drink. And when our drop plane took off, there was something else that was different. Ours was the only ship leaving. Inside the sweat box, as we arrowed straight for enemy territory, there was still another thing that was different. Sarge knew nothing about where we were going. Then the door to the pilot's compartment opened and an intelligence officer came out. You men weren't told where you were going because we wanted to avoid any possibility of a leak to the enemy. Only one plane was sent out not to arouse their suspicions. If you want to know what you're going to do after you're dropped, I can't tell you because I don't know myself. That was the last different thing about the job, the $64 one. While our eyes were still spinning, the officer continued. We're sending you out because of a triple alarm message radioed to us by our top agent in Sector N7. All he could get through before he was killed was, wars end in Rui outskirts in 24 hours. Then nothing except the shots that broke off the message. We know our agent was trying to discover a new secret weapon the enemy was working on which would end the war. We don't know what it is, except it's somewhere in the outskirts of Rui. Our agent sacrificed his life to get the message through. Your job is to find that secret weapon, whatever and wherever it is, and destroy it at all costs. Just then we heard lead hail on the roof. Enemy fighter hitting us, the intel officer yelled as the Nazi dove on us, firing. You've got to jump now before he stops us before we even started. There was no time for anything but to jump in the order we always had. The first man jumped and we could see his chute open. Then the plane swooped down on him like a hawk after a pigeon, firing, and the sky was empty. As the second man went out, I yelled, free fall as long as you can. He did fall free as a bird without his chute acting as a brake, but he was only a man, and the sky really wasn't his home, and it was the hawk that went after him. When I saw the enemy pilot was really shrewdy and was concentrating on us, not the plane, I decided we were going to go out in a bunch. We leaped together and counted to 10 to pull our chutes. As our chutes snapped open, the enemy plane dove at us, its machine guns ripping up the air all around us. You wouldn't think a quartet of guys hanging from nylon umbrellas could put up a steel wall that a buzzard could crack against, but we did. We got them. When I looked around, I saw that we was just me and the Sarge. The mission was up to us. Suddenly we were caught in a strange kind of green light, and I began to feel funny, very funny. At first I couldn't believe what was happening as I shrank and shrank. I was going to wake up any minute. A nighthawk swept by, thinking I was a package of K rations. Whatever had made me a minute commando out of me had also reduced the size of my gear, which was a good thing. Otherwise, trying to use my Tommy gun would have been like trying to cradle a 75 millimeter as I opened up on the Hawk. I heard another Tommy gun the size of a hairpin rattle in unison with mine. The Sarge had been shrunk too. We plucked the buzzard's feathers in our crossfire. For a moment we froze when the sky filled with searchlights. Then we began to laugh grimly as we realized the enemy couldn't spot us. We were too small. We landed, buried our chutes, and decided what to do next. It was a no-brainer. The secret weapon the agent had found out about had been used against us. We had to find it and destroy it before it was used on a much larger scale. We hadn't gone far before we stumbled on an enemy lookout grabbing himself some shut-eye in a foxhole. Potato masher and Luger sat on the ground in front of him, and we got a crazy idea. We've got no man-sized weapons to work with anymore. Let's sneak that Luger away. It's about the only thing we'll be able to handle. We tried hauling the Luger away by the handle, but we couldn't get a grip on it. So we threw a couple of hitches around the trigger with our belts and began to haul it. We must have been grunting too loud as we yanked at the cannon-sized Luger because the lookout woke up and shoved his grease gun at us. So it is true! The secret weapon works! You are proof of it! How simple it would be to fight soldiers the size of mice! And I will be the first to prove it. The enemy fired at us, and it was like standing beside a blast from a battleship's big guns. But we were so small he missed. We didn't when we yanked with everything we had on the trigger of the Luger. It worked! Yeah, but it'll take us a year to lug it anywhere, and by that time they'd have us in a mousetrap. Come on, we'll have to figure out something else. We ducked as a bicyclist rode up to us. He must have heard the sounds of the shots. We both got the same idea as the cyclist investigated. Wherever he's going to report what happened is where we want to go to, and the fastest way to get there is to go with him. We climbed onto the bicycle thinking we'd hold on to something solid on the frame, but before we had a chance, the Nazi returned and began to quickly pedal away. We hung on to the spokes while the world became a whirling nightmare, praying not to let go. Our commando training paid off, and when we finally let go, we saw the bike disappear into a camouflaged underground chamber. Just then, we heard a lone, low-flying bomber come over the field. It was one of ours. But before we could signal it, a strange green light stabbed up at the bomber from the underground chamber. Recognize that light, Sarge? It's the same one that tagged us. 1 second, there was a flying fort near above us. The next, it was gone. The end of the war is right here, all right, for the Allies, right under our feet. And there's no one to stop it but us, a couple of mice-sized commandos. I was just starting for the ramp trying to figure out what to do. An alarm broke out all around us. We must have set it off by not keeping to pre-marked lanes towards the underground chamber. We ran across booby traps and anti-tank mines, but we were too late to set them off. The alarm was still ringing, and then a new sound froze our bones. Tanks were coming up from the bunker. Then automatic fire broke out from behind us as guards began dusting the ground. This place is harder to crack than a vault of Fort Knox. Our only cover was an anti-tank mine, and we dove behind it. But now we were in front of the tanks coming out. What could we toss against that can? The $64 answer was right in front of us, the AT mine. Getting to the other side of the mine, we pushed it down the ramp and in front of the track of the lead tank coming out of the underground chamber as mortar-sized slugs whipped at our heels. We hustled out of the way and flattened as the tank's tread ground down on the anti-tank mine. It was a good thing we were knee-high to a grasshopper, because as the first tank blew up, it turned into armor-piercing ammo that splashed the second tank behind it. What happened below we could only guess as a chain reaction blew the top off the place. Now's the time to beat it. Let's go. Through the fence. Careful. The juice might still be on. Just as we started through the fence, a concussion threw us against the wires and fried us. It was lucky for us the explosions then shorted the fence, or we might never have come to, tossed full-sized into the field by the shock that had somehow reversed whatever process had reduced us. We started back to our lines. Well, Sarge, looks like the war isn't going to end for our side. Wonder what happened to the other guys. We'll never find out unless we watch our steps from now on. Funny, it would be a lot easier if we were still minute commandos. History Minute. Rui is about 170 miles south of Paris. So, okay, good. A real place. What a concept. The $64 question comes from the fact that $64 was the highest award on the CBS radio quiz show Take It or Leave It, which ran from 1941 to 1948, and then on NBC radio from 1948 to 1952. After 1950, the radio show was renamed the $64 question. The format of the show remained largely the same through the 12-year run. A contestant was asked a series of progressively more difficult questions, which began at $1 and ended at a top prize of $64. $64,000 question is an American game show broadcast in prime time on CBS from 1955 to 1958, which became embroiled in the 1950s quiz show scandals. Contestants, again, answered general knowledge questions, earning money which doubled as the questions became more difficult. The final question had a top prize of $64,000, hence the $64,000 question in the show's title. So the $64 question did exist during World War II, and the TV show had just ended in 1959, so no killjoy here. The phrase itself turned into a popular cultural line that was dropped for decades.
All right, very cool. I had no idea that that show lasted for so long. Like I knew kind of where it came from, even in my foggy memory, as we just explained and showed an example of to everyone. But I didn't know it ran for that long. That's pretty cool. And I was gonna call that out in my CNC, and then I saw you write up the history minute, and I did peek, and I went, oh, I can get rid of that. So speaking of comments and commendations, here's mine. Until I record this episode with Rich, I will have no idea how to say the name of the city Rui. And I don't think any of the people reading this comic book at the time would have either. Odd choice, and like Rich pointed out, weird choice, and one of the few times they pick out a real place and in the right location, but okay. Hold on to your hats, folks, because that's just about the only negative thing I have to say about this story. Okay, fine. I'll say that the intelligence officer on page one, panel five, made me think he was the father of the guy from the Rotira story and Weird War Tales number 68 with all the info he had for his men. But since that's from my beloved first issue of Weird War Tales ever, it's not exactly a knock either. Rich is going to cover a lot of this territory, but the art and the storytelling are pretty much killer from beginning to end in this one. Even the pages that feature some cramped panels that are a little overcrowded with word balloons, pages 2, 3, 8, and 11, they have so many other cool elements to them that you really don't notice much. Page 4 really opens things up visually, as does page 6, with panels 3 through 6 on that page, giving a lot of space to the green light effect, which is a risk that pays off well. Very minimalist panels, but it really gets across what's happening and how surprising and shocking it's supposed to be and how unreal it feels. Like that sudden change to a lot of openness really works, and it could have fallen really flat. On page 9, this story starts giving off some serious Jack Kirby vibes, with the shifts in perspective and scale from the much awaited pistol scene to our minute men's encounter with the bicycle in panels 4 through 6. From here on out, actually, the entire story feels like an early Marvel slash Atlas Comics astounding tale from the pens of Lee, Kirby, and Ditko, and that hurts my feelings not one little bit. I've got plenty of omnibuses in the closet behind me, two of which are just collections of Ditko 5-page stories that would prove that point pretty solidly if I dragged them out and showed them to y'all. To bring things back to DC Comics, though, the use of electricity to return our troops to their true size at the end does fit into a time honored tradition at this comic book company. In fact, serendipity comes in here, and in the latest issue of Back Issue Magazine at the time of this recording, number 159, a celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Crisis on Infinite Earth series, an article I just read before sitting down to do the script by John Wells lists several alternate Earths from DC Comics history, predating the Crisis on Infinite Earths and all that. And many of these other worlds were traveled to via freak, thunderstorm, or other lightning related accidents. And of course, how can we leave out the most famous of the alternate Earth issues, July 1961's Flash 123, where Barry Allen travels to Earth 2 and meets Jay Garrick? The Flashes have kind of a history with lightning too, huh? So the DC universe has a pretty long track record of giving lightning more or less magical properties. So that fit perfectly for me, and good timing, as I had just read, since I have a subscription to Back Issue Magazine, and you should too. You know, it's great. It's a great magazine. Tomorrow's Publishing does a good job. If you like old comics, and I think you do, you should be reading that mag. There you go. It really fit in to just how DC has used lightning in particular, where it can just do amazing things, transport you to another world, return you to your normal size instead of frying you to death, you know, whatever, the interrupted charges and the fences notwithstanding. Before I shut up for now, I'll say also that the first person narrative captions, to give a little more credit to the writing here, were really well done throughout this story, and that's not easy to pull off. But then again, nothing's easy. Okay, I'm done. Great story.
As is often the case with these older books, I'll be sprinkling my killjoy in with the CNC because it's just easier that way. Our splash page by Andrew and Esposito is a different version of our cover, and I think I like it better as the two sides exchange fire. All of page 3, the craft of the page is great. The moon, the clouds, the diving fighter. But that enemy pilot has to have incredible vision to nail a free-falling paratrooper at night. I'll give him the first one because the moon would light up his chute. Page 6, panel 1, scratch 1, Messerschmitt. Love the perspectives. Panel 3 of the same page as the shrink ray takes effect, the discomfort on the GI's face. Page 7, panel 3, a gripe that will no doubt come up from whatever war that time forgot Star Spangled War stories tale we end up doing. Those itty bitty bullets the commandos are firing would probably be deflected away by the hawk's feathers. Whatever gets through wouldn't be enough to kill the bird. Page 8, panel 5. As I said already, the Nazi is dumb. You wake up and find two shrunken soldiers dragging away your pistol. Firing at them that close, you probably blew dirt into your eyes. And why fire? Yank the pistol away from them and use your helmet to capture them like the Goliath of the Western Front does on the cover of Star Spangled War Stories 93, reprinted in Weird War Tales number 6. At the bare minimum, don't remain sitting in front of your pistol at point blank range as the tiny GIs tug at the trigger. In the face! Comics Code Authority indeed. The first 3 panels on page 10 as our wee warriors go for a spin on the motorcycle. What kind of commando training prepares you for that? 8 hours on a tilt-a-whirl at Coney Island? Page 11, panel 1. The Minimen set off an alarm by not staying in marked lanes. If the alarm is that sensitive, birds, mice, and blowing leaves would set off countless false alerts. Page 12, panel 1. Physics and friction. You two ain't moving that mine anywhere. Sympathetic detonations wipe out the enemy base. Convenience. And page 13, panel 2 of the shocking reversal. 2 thumbs up. And then moving on, at the very end of the story, there's a banner that reads, "Write and let us know if you'd like to read more stories about the minute commandos." Star Spangled War Stories number 90's letters page, Sergeant Rock's Combat Corner, addresses this a bit. Today, I'd like to pat on the shoulder all the readers who wrote in saying how much they liked the Minute Commando in October Men of War magazine. John Prillo of Covina, California writes, "I always enjoy unusual stories, and Minute Commandos tops them all. I hope you give us future adventures, the Minute Commandos." And a young lady from Cleveland, Ohio, who just signs her letter, Clara, writes that the comic book contained in the Minute Commandos was the first one she ever bought, but not the last. Thanks, Clara. Then he mentions 8 more fan letters that liked the story before continuing. How do the rest of you feel about reading more Minute Commando stories in Men of War magazine? Write and let me know. Welp. In that, this is the last time the Minute Commandos are ever mentioned again in any comic book, according to GCD. It was obviously not returned to. It would have been interesting to see a stab at this as a regular feature. Do they change back and forth like the Atom, or would it be a permanent condition? There could have been a great Atom origin tie-in, maybe. Did those 2 missing guys in the jump get hit by the beam also, as implied? Maybe they could be the Minute Commandos. Or maybe it would have completely sucked. Yeah, maybe a one and done is probably for the best. Oh, but wait a minute. That miniature B-17 is still out there. Oh, man. Yeah, overall, yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, I like all of that, potential. If it was in the right hands, that would be super fun. And maybe the 2 guys that, are main characters in this story, maybe they can go back and forth, but they have to receive a certain amount of an electric shock each time to change size after the fence restored them to normal size. And they have to kind of guess just how much voltage to use. I would enjoy that anyway. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm also going to hand off to Rich because he has far more right to take command of this section of the book than I do. So let him know what it is, huh?
Military Command Insignia, 1 page. Script pencils by Morris Waldinger, inks by Tom Nicolosi. Yeah, we have 4 insignia patches from 4 commands, Eastern Defense Command, the Military District of Washington, D.C., U.S. Army Forces South Atlantic, and Persian Gulf Service Command. The descriptions on each break down the heraldry of the image and colors portrayed. I'm going to read 2 of them. To indicate the geographical area of the U.S. Army Forces South Atlantic, the insignia bears the national green and yellow colors of Brazil. The South Atlantic is portrayed by wave scrolls. The island rising from the ocean stands for Ascension Island. The Southern Cross constellation, visible only in the southern hemisphere, is typified by 5 stars. And then next, for the insignia of the Persian Gulf Service Command, the colors red for sacrifice, white for purity, and green for agriculture have been selected. The white star has been borrowed from the flag of Iraq and the sword from the flag of Iran. No killjoy. And yeah, I'm the history nerd and the military half the cast, and I went 0 for 4 in these, which is the perfect reason these pages were so awesome. Max will no doubt repeat what I'm saying, but I wish DC had kept this stuff throughout the run of the war books, while all of the units, ships, squadrons, equipment, etc. of both sides throughout history They could have done it. Fun and educational.
Yeah, man. Agreed on all counts. I mean, I especially appreciated, as you just heard in those summaries Rich read to you, the effort put in to explain the meaning behind the images and design elements for each insignia. I mean, just I ate that stuff up. Like it was nice to see like there were reasons why they used a certain color or a certain image or theme. And yeah, I would have read 100 more of these in 100 more issues. Like if they had done it. Like unexpectedly cool one-page feature. I looked at that and I was like, oh, this is gonna be something I blow straight through. And I'm like, wait a minute, they actually spent some effort here, and it's interesting to look at and to read about. So yeah, I was really surprised by that, and damn, much like some of the features we wished had carried on in Weird War Tales from the first 7 issues of the battle albums and stuff like that, I would have enjoyed the heck out of as many of these as they wanted to put in front of me. So speaking of stuff that was put in front of me, I'm going to talk about the second story in this issue, and it's called No Boots for an Ace. It's a 6-pager. Script is by Bob Haney, and art is by the awesome Mort Drucker. Synopsis for this one goes like this. It's another first person narration story, people. When I joined Squadron X, I had 4 enemy planes and a mending arm from my last flight. While I stayed grounded, my fellow pilots entered Yellow Sector 7, the hunting ground for the top German ace von Tals. Every day I watched them go out at dawn, and I watched only a few come back after meeting with von Tals's outfit. And then a yellow-nosed Fokker flashed, easy for you to say, flashed over the field and arrogantly dropped the token, which meant that one of our pilots would not return. A pair of boots. During the night, I dreamed about the enemy ace and saw him and his band of yellow-nosed Fokkers on my tail. And during the day, Von Taus's boot insults were dropped on the field. Someday, I'd meet him and even the score, no matter what happened. Finally, I was cleared for flying, but the CO gave me the bad news. I know you're itching to go into Sector 7 and tangle with Von Tals. Forget it. You're no match for him. Your mission is to destroy enemy observation balloons. I bit back my disappointment. I had my orders. The enemy balloons looked like big, harmless sausages as I approached. The machine gun in the basket that opened up proved otherwise, but I had a trick up my sleeve. The gunners couldn't fire straight up without hitting their own balloon. So, when I zoomed my SPAD above it and half rolled, they were a sitting duck. I attacked the other balloons the same way, but wished I were tangling with Von Tals. I was thinking so hard about the enemy ace of Yellow Sector 7 as I headed home that I never saw the albatross coming out of the sun from behind me. As his guns raked me from tail to cockpit, I sent my SPAD into a fast wingover. From that position, my twin Vickers 30 caliber chewed up that albatross. Then I realized that the fight had carried us into Yellow Sector 7, over Von Taus's field. I slipped off one of my boots, scribbled a note, stuffed it inside, and dropped it. A few minutes later, a yellow-nosed Fokker accepted my challenge and zoomed up to meet me. Now we'd see whose boots get tossed down on whose field. Well, you already dropped one of yours, buddy, but okay. I was amazed at how easily I got above him. Before, Von Tals had always jumped my comrades with his whole bunch. Now he was alone. He was in my sights and I fired. But the next instant, I was spraying bullets into thin air. He's as slippery as a ghost. I looked everywhere for him. He couldn't just disappear. Where is he? I began to sweat. Was he a man or really a ghost? Then, as I banked hard left, I saw he was right under me, imitating my every move. When I recovered from my surprise, Von Tals was on my tail. I'd had fighters on my tail before and had always shaken them, but not now. The yellow-nosed plane clung to me like death, meaning to collect my other boot. In desperation, I deliberately stalled my SPAD and dropped like a pierced sparrow toward the earth below. Von Tals was following me so close that I saw a desperate chance. I coaxed my fluttering Spad into a half roll, catching the enemy ace in my slipstream. Quickly, I jammed the rudder pedal and swung my nose around at his out of control Fokker and fired a long burst. Von Tals went straight in, smashing to pieces on his own field. The enemy killer ace. I had met him and won. Now, as I nursed my crippled Spad home, away from the flaming wreck, I thought, maybe I didn't drop his boots on his field, but I dropped something else. At the end.
Killjoy, history minute. The planes the Americans fly are identified as Spads, but I'm thinking Newports. Spads don't have a machine gun mounted on top of their upper wing. Newports did. I've no idea what Von Tals is flying. Observation balloons were dangerous targets during World War I, heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns. You earned that victory if you bagged one, which is why they counted as kills. Sidebar, the observers in the balloons wore parachutes and could leap to safety if need be. The airmen in the planes did not until very late in the war. There was some argument about weight or choosing the easy way out rather than staying in the fight. Who knows how many thousands died needlessly because of it. Frank Luke Jr. was an American fighter ace credited with 18 aerial victories, ranking him second among United States Army Air Service pilots during World War I, after Eddie Rickenbacker. Luke was the first airman to receive the Medal of Honor posthumously, and the first USAAS Ace in a Day. Luke Air Force Base in Arizona is named in his honor. Luke was credited with shooting down 14 German balloons and 4 airplanes during just 10 sorties in 8 days, a feat unsurpassed by any pilot in World War I. His Medal of Honor is on display at the National Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, and I've seen it. On his final mission, he shot down 3 balloons before being mortally wounded by ground fire. Remember what I said about balloons being dangerous? He was only 21 years old and is buried in the Meuse-Argonne American Cemetery in France. In addition to his Medal of Honor, he also earned 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, which was the next award down from Medal of Honor. Total badass. Lieutenant Steve Savage, Balloon Buster, who I mentioned earlier, was created by Bob Conager and Russ Heath, appearing in 26 issues of various DC war books, the first being in All-American Men of War 112, this very title. Savage enlisted in the Army Air Corps at the onset of World War I. He repeatedly disobeyed orders, breaking formation to attack and destroy the German combat balloons, which earned him the nickname, and flirted with court-martial several times. Just like Frank Luke. I got an idea. Bob and Russ didn't have to work very hard to create the Balloon Buster.
Yeah, perhaps not. And I'm so glad that Steve Savage, the Balloon Buster, worked his way into this script, because what got me started on the podcasting trail, as some people may have heard about, was listening to the Who's Who podcast from the Fire and Water Podcast Network, where Rob Kelly and Shag Matthews went through every issue of DC's, at this time, I do remember it was in the 80s, Who's Who comic book series. And they talked about every entry. And when they covered the Balloon Buster, they went absolutely nuts. They had not heard of the character. They fell in love with the Who's Who entry. They revisited it, I think, when they did the Who's Who review to like go deeper on certain entries. And it became an absolute favorite of theirs and of that show. Like, he was mentioned a lot as someone who just took them completely by surprise. Like, they loved the art for the entry, the summary of what info on the character. He became like a kind of a mascot for the show in a way. So I was very happy to see Steve Savage get mentioned here, because respect on that name. All right. So speaking of respect and names, I'm going to kick off the comments and commendations for this actual story. Mort Drucker is yet another artist that this podcast has helped me develop a far greater appreciation for than I used to have. The splash panel alone proves my point. The framing of the scene, the emotion carried by the body language of the figures in action, and the grittiness of the rendering all combine to make an image that is practically poster worthy. There's a few of those in this issue here. There's shades of John Severin in the work too, and that is never a bad thing to say about a piece of comic book art. Drucker pulls off some great stylistic flourishes too, with Brad's eyes serving as the sky in the one-panel dream sequence that kicks off the second page. There's Stellar work in every panel by Drucker, and Rich calls out a lot of it. Again, the unidentifiable planes or the miss, none of that bothers me because I don't recognize it. So, to me, all just incredibly impressive work. So I'll try to hold back. But another great stylistic trick Drucker pulls off comes in the switch to the gun sight view in panels 5 and 6 on page 4. As for the story itself, the grim escalation of Von Tals's taunting is handled well, like with his continual dropping of the boots and just how brazen it is and how just nasty that is. That comes across really well. And you can feel the tension of those who want to punish the German ace and thereby they help him succeed at his goal of distracting his enemies from their actual goal. I even really like the first person narrative captions again that told the story. Something hard to pull off, but worked really well. It brought you in. They were all written perfectly. The final conflict is satisfying as well, with Brad's single boot drop followed by a tense, brutal, and incredibly well depicted dogfight to the end. This is just effortlessly classic stuff, in my opinion.
You did drop his boots on Von Tallis's field. His feet were still in them, attached to his legs and torso. Okay, maybe that's a bit too grisly for a 1959 comic in general. A thought came to me one night when I was mulling over the script about how literal one can take the title of the story. No boots for an ace. Our hero had 4 victories when he arrived at Squadron X and doubled his score by the time the tale ended. 2 balloons, 2 planes. That made him an ace, which is 5 kills. Because he threw one of his boots down on Von Tallis's field, does that mean there are no boots for him? An ace? We assume the jab is aimed at Von Tallis, but is it? The splash panel on page 1 gets us off to a good start. Your eyes are drawn right in to the boots, which with the title right under him. The U.S. pilots are running to get them, and one is angrily shaking his fist at the departing Von Tallis. I think Brad is a bit too close on page 3, panel 1, blasting the first observation balloon, but it's still a good piece of work, as is the panel 3, coming out of the sun. I really like the perspective panel, looking down on Von Tallis's field on page 4, panel 1. The last 2 panels on that page are the German playing the "Now you see me, now you don't" are classic war comic fare. But the story ends on 2/3 of a page rather abruptly. Von Tallis gets caught in our hero's low-level slipstream, and the American has time to swing around and shoot him down. How much slipstream does a SPAD generate? And the victory shot doesn't look like it's too low level either, although I do like the art of the last 2 panels. Speaking of which, we never even got to see our boys shoot down the albatross that pounced on them either. I like a lot of the story, but it has a bunch of problems too. But if I have to decide between yay or nay, screw it. It's a 50s DC war story. Yay! And now, a first time thing, we're going to actually do the a letters page for one of these DC war books. I don't think we've ever done one before, because I think they were like, it was just manufactured, what does a hand grenade consist of? Blah, blah, blah stuff that a lot of these pages had in them at the time. So Combat Corner letters page. Banner logo art by Raymond Perry. It shows a helmeted GI with rolled up sleeves banging away on a typewriter on a wooden crate. He's sitting in the rubble of a blasted building as bullets fly and shells explode nearby. This logo was used in several of the battle books before being supplanted by Sergeant Rock's Combat Corner with appropriate new logo. Bob Conager often served as the Combat Corner editor. So I'm going to start off. Like I said, the editorial offerings this one were just too rich to pass up. I'm going to read the offering by Michael Robbins when he asks, what was the most effective tank during World War II? And he's from New York, New York. And the response was, Dear Michael, although the General Pershing tank with its 90mm gun was probably our most rugged tank, it came out too late in the war to cop the prize as the most effective tank during World War II. The honor rightfully belongs to the 35-ton General Sherman, which was able to defeat heavier and more powerfully armed German tanks because it was easier to handle and was mechanically sturdier. Combat Corner editor. Well, get ready for your first ever letters page killjoy. But Conager isn't wrong calling the Sherman the most effective American tank of World War II, there are asterisks galore to go with that statement. I've covered this topic in another episode. The Sherman wasn't built to engage enemy armor. It was built to support infantry operations. It was a great tank in 1942, a decent one in 43, outclassed in 44, and the war went to 45. Towards the end of the war, German Tigers and Panthers were so robust, the Sherman's 75 millimeter shells had little effect if fired at them head on. We had better tanks in the pipeline, but the powers that be didn't want to slow down production to swap over wholesale to the new designs. There are stories of a single Tiger running around a column of Shermans going ping, 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 and the returned fire being totally ineffective. Watch the 4-on-1 scene in the movie Fury to get a vibe on that. Yeah, the Tiger should have knocked out Fury first. The only Sherman with a bigger gun. To be fair, the Tigers and Panthers had acres of mechanical problems and weren't produced at anywhere near the numbers that the Shermans were. Even the Germans said the Sherman couldn't stand up to their armor, but we made so damn many of them, over 49,000, and we gave them to all the Allied nations. They were easy to maintain, adaptable, and reliable. But a lot of people also thought it was borderline criminal putting our guys in them against enemy armor. Arguments could be made about various British, German, or Soviet tanks being the best tank in the war, like T-34s. Perhaps famous is the word that should be used here. Hate to do it, but there's a certain level of 1950s USA homerism going on here. Rant over.
Yeah, you're going to get a little jingoism in your 1950s war comics. It's just going to be a thing. So my pick here for the Combat Corner starts off like this. Dear editor, in a recent story, you had an incident in which a man was in a river facing a Nazi patrol boat. In order to destroy the enemy boat, he pulled the pin of a grenade, let the safety lever up, put it in his helmet, and floated it downstream to blow up the patrol boat. Knowing a grenade has a 5-second fuse, don't you think this would be utterly impossible and highly improbable? I also think that a grenade could not blow a 95-foot patrol boat to splinters, such as this one did. That little missive comes from Bill Markle Jr., San Antonio, Texas. And the editorial response goes like this. Dear Bill, it makes us feel good to know that our stories are so carefully read. Just the same, I'm afraid you have overlooked a number of factors which would make the incident more believable to you. For instance, a really swift river current should get the grenade to its target with time to spare. Also, you may have misjudged the actual distance between the soldier and the size of the patrol boat. As for the destructive power of a grenade, have you considered the possibility of the blast hitting the boat's gas tank? However, let me compliment you on your acute observations. Keep us on our toes, Rich Fulham, time-traveling comic book reader. That comes from the Combat Corner editor. So, yeah, the Killjoy is not something that we invented unless Rich does have a time machine. But man, that gave me shivers reading that. I always like finding Rich's ancestors here in spirit in various letters pages that we dip into. So just a lot of fun. And I like Conager's very diplomatic way he kicked that off with. It feels good to know that our stories are being so carefully read. Like, oh, if you were sitting across the table from me, you'd find out just how good I feel. That was fun.
It's almost like an early version of the Answer Man or something.
Oh yeah, man. Bob Rozakis. Bob Rozakis was more openly sarcastic sometimes.
Okay, last story. Every day is D-Day. 6 pages. Script by Hank Chapman. Art by Jack Abel. The month is June. The date is the 6th. The time. 0600 hours. The place is a fire and steel sprayed beach in Nazi France called Utah. And there you are, smack in the middle of it. You take a dive when the Nazi pillbox opens up and tries to make you swallow a burst of Maxim MG pills. You muse that if you live through D-Day, you'll live forever, but the Sarge hands you a satchel charge. Deliver this to that Nazi pillbox that's got us nailed down. We'll give you BAR cover. Browning automatics spread their lead umbrella, and you bend into an Anzio crouch and move out with your 20-pound luggage. Got to expect tough details on D-Day. It's the worst day. Tomorrow will be different. The Nazis, the pillbox, know what you're carrying and why, and open up, trying to detonate the satchel. The Jerry slug rips through the handle and sends blocks of TNT flying. Taking cover, you're able to scoop up most of your spilled eggs into your steel pot before crawling on to make the delivery. The MG can't depress far enough to get you in its sights as you crab to the base of the pillbox and stuff your loaded pot inside. The Sarge sprays the pillbox to cover you as you double time back. Faster, dogface! Run faster! That stuff will airmail you here! Then the sky caves in. Your head's got a dozen big bends banging in it. When you finally open your eyes, you see a tiger bearing down on your MG hammering. The deep shell hole you fell into saved you from the pillbox blast, but it won't stop the tank from stomping all over you. As the tiger crawls closer and closer, you pluck out a grenade, even though you know it'll have as much a chance of snowballing a blast furnace to dent that tank. D-Day is the toughest day, and it should be smooth sailing after that, but looks like I'm going to be shipwrecked any minute. You flip your smoke grenade at the iron-skinned tiger and hear the Nazi crew laugh. You charge behind the smokescreen, silent as a mouse. The tiger's blind fire misses. You find a view slit in the smoke and fire into it. Nothing happens. Then everything happens to the tank as the ricochets find the tiger's stored ammo. Even before the ground stops shaking and the Sarge helps you up. It's the toughest on D-Day. Tomorrow will be different. You keep fighting and hoping all day and all night. It won't be long now. D-Day will soon be over and the battle pressure will be off us. The Sarge discovers the mortar nest we've been after. Grenades go first, 30 calibers follow, and you're right behind them to add the finishing touches. All night, you trigger from one objective to another until... Look, Sarge, the sun's coming up. D-Day is over at last. The worst is over. Today will be a picnic compared to yesterday. But then the picnic starts. Nazi artillery has you zeroed, and the only place to hide is in your helmet. All you can do is zigzag through the forest of shellfire, and when the artillery stops shagging you, fuck wolves take over with strafing runs. This is worse than D-Day. Tomorrow it's gotta ease up for sure. But you find that D-Day +3 is no different. Neither is D-Day +4, nor D +5. Grenading MG nests in towns, blasting panzers with bazookas. You keep telling yourself tomorrow will be different. It'll cool down tomorrow. It's got to. D +20 or 30. You begin to feel the difference as you successfully attack an enemy position across the Shell River. The change is not in fighting or the enemy. It's in you. You've learned something since you hit the beach a month ago. D-Day is rough, but every day is D-Day. Killjoy. The suitcase satchel charge on page 2, panel 2. I'll get back to that and more in the CNC. And hey, it's my turn, so I get to that now. We got off to a fast start on the splash panel with the two GIs on a beach bursting through a June calendar page and firing. I give the creative team full marks for correctly portraying on the calendar that June 6th, 1944 was on a Tuesday. I love the over-the-top description of battle in these old war books, literally putting you in the engagement. You take a dive when a Nazi pillbox opens up and tries to make you swallow a burst of Maxim MG pills. Yes, yes, yes! 1950s DC war book, and I am here for all of it. I wrote war stories as a kid like that. The same panel, that last quote has you thinking you'll live forever, you can survive D-Day. It also has the Sarge handing you a suitcase filled with dynamite telling you to go knock out that pillbox. We'll cover you, and fingers crossed. Page 2, panel 2, when a Jerry slug tears off the handle, you even remark that you lost your suitcase. And it just scoops up all the loose TNT into his helmet. Page 2, panel 3, which is still a cool drawing. Shoves it into the pillbox and it magically goes off after a few seconds. Okay. Sidebar. The M37 demolition kit contained 8 blocks of high explosives with 2 priming assemblies and a canvas bag with a shoulder strap. Part or all of this charge could be placed against a structure or slung into an opening. It was usually detonated with a pull igniter. One of the guys in my reenactment unit has an engineer kit and has an inert one of these on display. Page 3, panel 6. I don't know if I had an opportunity to bring this up before in the old war books, but I don't think firing a rifle into the view slit of a tank to set off the stored ammo would work. Another awesome panel, but the knockout method would probably be the ricochets bouncing around the tank, killing the crew. No glorious explosion, although I do love it. Page 4, panel 3's attack scene is solid, complete with the dropped enemy rifle dead center. black background with the yellow, red, and orange attacking GIs as war comic gold. But another mini history minute in regards to the story proper. With the exception of Bloody Omaha, getting ashore wasn't the big problem. Moving inland was. With the exception of Utah, all of the beaches were supposed to be linked at the end of the first day. That wasn't accomplished until June 12th. The city of Caen was a D-Day objective for the British. It wasn't captured until July 21st. The biggest intelligence failure of the landings were the hedgerows waiting for the Allies. The Khotan Peninsula is largely compartmentalized in small orchards or cultivated fields bordered with hedges. This is what the geographers called the Normandy bocage. Each compartment was a miniature fortress, and the attackers were completely unprepared for how to deal with them. The Allied timetable was completely upended by the effective defensive battle of the Germans. And it wouldn't be until the end of August before the Allies finally broke out of Normandy. I'm pretty sure Hank Chapman didn't intend for the story to reflect the reality so closely, but he did, and did it well. Final grade? Yeah, there's some killjoy. Again, it's the 1950s war book. It's all about the killjoy. But I just can't hold that against this story. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, there is not much I can add to all of that, as I agree with pretty much all of it. For example, I am an absolute sucker for that splash panel, which makes great use of a favorite old-time movie trope of mine, the giant calendar page. I also love the dotted line as the plane travels over a map trope, but no time for that now. And remember how I mentioned that first-person narrative captions are hard to pull off? Well, second person captions are even tougher, and these are done perfectly. The writing walks a tightrope between dramatic and jingoistic and lands pretty solidly on the better side of that divide, making you feel as though you're following a genuine emotional journey and not just listening to a recruitment ad about war making a man of a soldier. Like I could call back to the Face of the Fighter, Weird War Tales #2. That comes right to mind. And I love the turns of phrase too. I gotta say, in these captions, so many cool things like the box full of MG pills, the lead umbrellas. It's not lazy stuff. It's very creative and very effective. The art, page design, and visual storytelling are done so well that the first and last pages come out as the worst of the bunch in quotation marks, and neither one of them is bad at all. Since it seems to be my department around here, though, I will mention the excellent use of one of my other favorite tools in the comic book artist kit, appropriately unrealistic coloring. All throughout this story, the colorist abandons the too often adhered to slavishness to realism that war comics can often succumb to, and changes up the hues for dramatic impact. Figures and objects turn red, orange, or yellow to highlight the tension of the mood as the artist sees fit, and it does nothing but add to the impact of each moment the technique is used in. This is another masterclass in comic book storytelling, folks. Yes, in a 50s DC war comic, and I am having a blast with it. Just another great one. So there we go. We've covered the actual story content in this issue. And you know what that means, folks? We're going to go on to our spotlighted ads contained within this comic book. And I'll kick it off. I had to pick a one-page educational ad called "It's Fun to Learn." And let's see, we got a 1, 2, 3, we got a 6-panel comic book style story here underneath the giant banner up top that says "It's Fun to Learn" in more or less block letters. And then first panel, we've got 2 Utes working together, clearing a field, saying, "This will make a swell ball field for us if we can clear away all these rocks and everything." Second panel has one of the boys in a red shirt trying to move a log, and he's, "I can't even move this log." Kid up front says, "Wait a second, Steve. I've got an idea. This should work. I've seen pictures of how you do it." So third panel, the boys have a lever atop a rock, and they're both pushing down with the end of the lever under the log. And the second boy says, "But it's only moving a little. Maybe we need some more fellers to help." And then an adult shows up, says, "Not necessarily, Billy. You have the right idea using the stick as a lever and the rock as a fulcrum, but try moving the rock closer." So somehow they move the rock closer to the log. The penultimate panel here, you got the 2 boys working on the lever again. It says, "Yowee! It's working! How'd you know that's all we needed, Ted?" The grown up, Ted, says, I learned it in school. The closer the fulcrum is to the thing you're lifting, the easier it is to lift. Or you could have used a longer lever to get the same result. Final panel, everyone standing together in triumph over the relocated log. And holding the one kid is holding the lever up like it's some kind of spear. It says, "Gosh, that's fun. It won't be long, I guess, before we'll be learning things like that in school, eh, Steve?" And on the bottom, you have a little bit of text that says published as a public service in cooperation with the National Social Welfare Assembly, coordinating organization for national health, welfare, and recreation agencies of the U.S. And all I gotta say is all I could hear reading this ad from my modern day kid who grew up in the 80s and 70s and 80s perspective was G.I. Joe. Like all that was missing was having Roadblock come in to stomp on that lever and launch that log into the sun. So there we go. That's my spotlighted ad for this issue. Rich has picked one as well. What you got?
Frontier Cat, large enough for two children to play in. It's it's a half-page ad that shows art of a boy wearing a coonskin cap and holding a musket, standing guard in front of a log cabin. This looks pretty cool, but I've been less impressed with kitty castles of a more recent vintage. There must be some false advertising in here somewhere, and I'll get right to it. Complete $1, five for only $4. Ranch house for girls, secret clubhouse for boys from 4 to 14, endless hours of excitement and fun for every child. Terrific value at this unbelievably low price. We're the largest manufacturing and distributor of playhouses in the US. Over 200,000 satisfied customers. Your satisfaction guaranteed was nationally advertised at $1.99. Now only $1. It's huge, over 3 feet high, approximately 23 cubic feet interior, covers almost 9 square feet of floor space, king size replica, complete with sloping roof, authentically imprinted split log walls, large door and windows may be opened and closed, waterproof for year-round indoor and outdoor play, gives children unlimited scope to use their imagination. Youngsters can play nursery games. Older children find it exciting to use as a western jail for rustlers, bunkhouse for rough riding cowboys, settlers' cabin, attacked by Indians, etc. Shipped pre-assembled with 4 interlocking roof supports. Sets up in 1 minute. No tools necessary. Send cash, check, or MO plus 25 cents for handling and postage charges on each house. Guaranteed. Sorry, no CODs. It also goes on. Special girls' playhouse, same dimensions as cabin with windows and doors, beautifully decorated with flower boxes, shrubs, shutters, and shingle walls. There's tiny print. Delightful playhouse, constructed of durable DuPont flame-resistant waterproof plastic for extra durability. Cutaway view shows a unique one-piece construction utilized extended folding table legs supporting roof. So you see, you whip out the coupon and you send it to Frontier Cabin Room, whatever the hell the address is, Broadway, New York, New York. And it's just like, I did some online searching for it, but yeah, I couldn't find anything.
I gotta say, the dimensions remind me of one of my first apartments.
Hey, so, but I would also say I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't give a tip of the cap to at least one of the third page of ads at the end of each story promoting other comics. I'll use Star Spangled War Stories as the example. It has a picture of Mademoiselle Marie on it. Meet the battle doll of the French underground, the guerrilla leader who uses lipstick and TNT with equally devastating effect. Mademoiselle Marie in Star Spangled War, on sales everywhere. She's firing away. We will hold off the Nazis while you plant the charges. So,
Hey man, thanks for holding up my end of the reading the house ads for the ad section. Good looking out.
well, they had one for like Green Lantern and Gunner and Sarge also.
Yeah, man. Like the house ads are they're super fun. Like that's how we used to find out about other comics back in the day, people. Like these cool grab some more eyeballs while you're in there house ads. So
Well, especially the vintage ones.
oh
You
yeah.
know, I mean, you can't go
Hell
wrong
yeah.
with this stuff, man. God, I mean, 1959 Green Lantern, come on.
Just you're gonna get the craziest coverage you've ever seen. The most ridiculous premises. So there we go. That's the ads. What are we doing next, Rich? We're doing a little section we call Got any last words?
Because I had to. I worked on the script for this over Memorial Day weekend. I actually jumped ahead and did the script for this one before WWT 69. And then there was one. Star Spangled War Stories is the only one of the big five remaining that we have to address. Don't forget, we did that Visiting the Next Five episode where we touched on Men of War, All Out War, Blitzkrieg, and Captain Storm. Should I have done an issue with Johnny Cloud in it? Maybe. But a prerequisite for all these special mission episodes that has to have something weird on the cover. And nothing is beaten a Minute Commandos. The books from the 50s and 60s were usually fun-filled rides, and this one did not disappoint. Add an honest-to-God letters page and a page of info, this book is a complete package.
Yeah, and I want to mention, like, this just occurred to me while you were reading your last words. I just read a new DC comic called The New History of the DC Universe, issue one, written by Mark Waid. I was very happily surprised to find that, it covers what you could consider the first half and ends with like Superman's rocket launching from Krypton, but it also covers a whole ton of war characters. At least they get a mention and pretty good illustrations in that issue. And it even had people from the next five. Gravedigger was in there. It's just Captain. All these people were mentioned. So if you are looking for another place where our favorite war characters at least make a cameo appearance, New History of the DC Universe, issue one. Uh, I was really surprised, happily so, to see how those characters got pretty much equal treatment to a lot of the superhero types that you'd figure they'd focus a lot more on. Even the Western heroes are mentioned and given really cool drawings and spotlights in it. So, okay, that aside, this being a 1950s war comic, I was braced for some cringe-inducing content, and instead I found none. Absolutely none. This thing just entertained me all the way through, and I'm super glad we covered it for the show. Hooah! As Rich mentioned, it is hard to beat the cover story here, but they were all pretty great. It's a dead heat for me, but Minute Commandos just that one's just got the extra juice, you know. So that's it, folks. That's our last words. Here we are at the scuttlebutt once again. And I'm going to mention at the top here, before I get to my usual spiel, that one thing we're doing behind the scenes here at the Weird Warriors podcast is I have started uploading audio of our episodes from the beginning to YouTube. Pretty soon, you'll be able to go to our YouTube channel. Right now, at the time of this recording, I have uploaded episodes 0 through 7, including the first Road Warriors episode, the Glansman trip, up to YouTube. And by the time this episode comes out, who knows? I may have uploaded them all. I probably won't have. It's me. But I have found that it's a pretty easy process. So those of you who prefer to just put YouTube on and let stuff play, that's just where you do things online, we're going to be there. We are going to have a YouTube channel, people. So, so there you go. On top of that, I'll remind you of things we already have, like our awesome Facebook page, the Weird Warriors Podcast Facebook page run by your good friend and mine, Rich. At least I think he's my good friend. He's been faking it for a long time. He's playing a long game. All right. So there's the Facebook page. We got a redbubble.com store. You know what to do there. Look for us. Get our awesome logo that was drawn and designed by Bill Walko of the Hero Business and of Archie Comics fame. And get some merch. Get it shipped to you. Get a picture of you with the merch. Just a picture of the merch in your hand. Send it to the Facebook page via Facebook Messenger. You'll get a Sam Star. You should know what that is. We shouldn't have any left. I don't know, man. I don't know if we should even offer these anymore. but I'm not the giving type. And Rich is. And you know what? He's going to give you even a little bit more right now with a teaser for our next episode.
Weird War Tales number 70. Gotta admit, even I'm starting to get impressed with the show's longevity. Vampires at Sea, Cowards in Space, a one-page story, and more Hembeck. You know where I'll be. I'm working on the script for Weird War Tales 71, probably. Someone has to. It won't be him. See you soon.
Hey, I did one of the script, well, some of one of the scripts before you recently. One time out of 124 is probably all you're going to get. All right, so Cowards in Space. Do I appear in the next issue of Weird War Tales? Tune in next time to find out. And tune into what? Why, this show, the Weird Warriors podcast. And listen to who? That's us. That's me and Rich. That's the Weird Warriors, the Batlin Bros. And on this show, as the Batlin Bros, Rich and I promise to make war
No more.